Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The A Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to today's episode. Rod here at A Better Way to Farm, where we increase yields and improve profits. We are very, very lucky today. We have a friend who's going to be joining us to give us a different perspective. A lot of times here we talk pure agronomy, and that's fantastic, and that's important for all of you because we have to be making the best agronomic decisions that we can. However, as we go forward in farming, we know that we have a lot of partners. Hopefully we have an agronomist who's a partner with us. Hopefully we have some equipment advisors who are partners with us. Hopefully we have some good seed advisors who are partners with us. And we also all should have a banker or two that we're partnered up with a really good relationship. And today we're going to take a look at a better way to farm, but we're going to do it through the lens, through the perspective of someone who is a banker. And this individual came to me at the last Fundamentals of Agronomy, and we got a chance to talk, and I really appreciate his perspectives. And he agreed graciously to take some time out of his schedule today and share with us. So I'd like to welcome to the call our good friend from over in Illinois, Isaac. Isaac, thank you for the time you're going to share with us today.
No, I'm happy to join you, Rod. I appreciate the opportunity to speak and hope to be a help to anybody involved in this industry. Me being a farmer myself, I pride myself in, trying to know the industry to the best of my ability, but things are ever changing. There's a lot of variables and there's a lot to learn.
Yeah. And it is interesting because as a farmer who banks or a banker who farms, you do have a little different perspective. To briefly tell us a little bit about your operation. What do you raise there on your farm?
Yep. So interestingly enough, I'm actually a part of two different operations that I had an opportunity to be involved in, but holistically, I call it all one in my mind. So mainly on our farms, we raise corn and soy for the most part, and we actually do a little over a couple hundred acres worth of alfalfa hay production for the retail markets.
Nice. Okay. That's a nice cash sideline also. Appreciate that. And how long have you been working as a farm lender?
Yes, going on 2 years now, so definitely early in my career. I like to say that my training was the book of hard knocks, and in times like right now, definitely a lot of opportunity to learn. When corn's $7 and everybody's happy, these financial distresses that have hit us at this point in time aren't as much of a concern, but this is definitely the time to learn and get ready for that punch back one of these days when maybe hope comes together and commodity prices turn around.
Yeah, it is different. If you're selling corn and the first digit is a 3, it's very different than if the first digit is a 7. $7 corn hides a multitude of mistakes and bad decisions, I would agree. So talk to us, first of all, what attracted you? Why did you show up at our Fundamentals of Agronomy? What attracted you to A Better Way to Farm? Because I assume your primary attraction was as a farmer, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I mean, obviously, selfish motive first, and then, career-based secondly, for sure. But they tend to tie together, whether you're a seed guy farming or a lender, it's a very similar dynamic there. I mean, I would say, number one, we're going on year 4. Some would argue year 5 of this lull that we're kind of in here. And things are definitely starting to take a toll across the, countryside. It doesn't matter where we're at in the nation. The way that commodity prices affected operations is definitely a constraint and definitely takes away growth opportunities, to say the least. So my biggest thing is I've always felt as this be initiative to be better stewards of the land and leave it better today so that the next generation can take it, run with it, and make it that much better. And so that's always been a policy in my head, will continue to be a policy in my head. Some may agree, some may not, but that's my moral obligation, I guess you could say. And thus, the biggest word I guess I would tie to that is efficiencies. How can we become more efficient doing what we're doing? And as a lender, I'm all about the bottom line, the ROI. I spent some time in the seed industry, and there was a lot of things that came up when we're assessing yield that had nothing to do with ROI, actually. One of those being test weight, and we can get into that later. But my biggest thing is baseline, and it's great to add yield, and I think with Better Way to Farm, very much early into my development with different systems and stuff. But big thing there, though, is just trying to ratchet those numbers down to maybe raise the same crop just for significantly less.
Yeah, exactly. So coming out of the meeting, give me one example of something you saw how you could improve efficiencies in your own farm, and then thereby you're going to be able to talk to people that you're lending to about how they can do likewise. Give me an example of something you saw out of that.
Holy crud, you only want one?
We'll go with two.
So my biggest one I probably took away was just the conversation around broadcast fertilizer and how inefficient it is. And looking out to this next spring here, with the way that prices are going to probably continue to go, I don't know how somebody pays that price and not cut on fertilizer. And when you're already talking about fertilizer sources that aren't super efficient to begin with, and then cutting them back even more so, and thinking that's not going to affect your yield, well, you're poorly mistaken, kind of thing. It's like, honestly, my head instantly went to how do we get starter on our planter? Because historically, we've been kind of at the mercy of the retailer. We're already, as farmers, price takers, not price givers. And so any opportunity I can do to affect that relationship or that dynamic, I should say, I want to try to do. And so getting starter fertilizer on the planter, I think, is going to be key here this winter. We kind of came in mid-season here trying to implement some stuff. There's obviously, I would say from a 30,000 foot view, we've had definitely exceptional yields, but I definitely think that we have the ability to, move those both ways, whether it be efficiency or overall yield. So definitely the starter fertilizer conversation, everything around it. There's been a lot of, opinions on starter fertilizer in my area on whether or not it works or not. And what I learned after, speaking with you, Rod, and then many of the folks there at Better Way to Farm is, not all products are the same. I've had many neighbors who have tried boron products or zinc products or whatever it may be, and they're like, oh yeah, just try it, it's $5 an acre, $6 an acre, and it's like no result. And I'm learning very quickly why that potentially is. And so I'm hoping that we can maybe reinstill the whole idea around starter fertilizer back in our area, because we are in an area that I joke with some of my neighbors to the south down by the river that, where they very much have irrigation and sand and deal with that dynamic that, I'm pretty sure we could broadcast corn here and make 250 bushel. So it's like we have forgiving components, but, not impenetrable to cause and effect.
No, exactly. And I think the key there to getting the row place starter and the efficiency that comes with it still comes back to the soil test. That, you've listened to me on social media, and one of the phrases I really detest is try some. That is not scientific. And, being hopeful is not a method for being successful. And those guys where you try some zinc, you try some boron, in one place it works, in one place it don't, and you don't know why. But when it all comes back to, Isaac, when you do the soil test, and it tells you exactly which nutrients to put on which field, now all of a sudden you can get an ROI on what you're doing. So I appreciate that. Let's go at this, though, because I want to talk to the guys. We're all going to, well, maybe not all, but a good percentage of us are going to have to go to the bank this fall, this winter, or early spring, and we're going to hopefully pay off our operating loan, and we're going to come back in and want another operating loan. So from the lender's perspective, talk to us about how what we do here at A Better Way to Farm can help those guys to come in with a better, two things. How do they present a better case to get their loans renewed? And number two, how do they present the case to make this change? Because let's be honest, a lot of the lenders went to the land grant colleges. The land grant colleges are all pushing dry broadcast. And so in their brain, this is a cycle. We do it this way over and over and over again. And you're stepping outside of that. How do they get their renewals? And number two, what do they say to you, or what are you going to teach these guys so that they can make a difference and stop doing the dry broadcast and actually replace that? It isn't use starter and, it's how much of my dry can I replace with the starter? How are they going to go about having that conversation that would be effective as you see it?
Well, I guess going back to, starting with the renewal process, what a lot of people don't realize is I may be somebody's lender, I may be the client-facing individual, but I am not the only person that makes the decision on whether or not an operating line is going to be renewed or not. The common thing being seen right now across the board, whether you're large scale, small scale, everything in between, Obviously, every operation has their offsetting strengths, but the number one thing is lack of cash, right? And people trying to climb out of the hole. It's funny that you said hopefully pay your operating line, because most of the time there's usually always a balance being rolled over year to year, and we try to mitigate that as much as possible. But understand that we want to get that as close to zero as possible. I guess one thing I will say in regards to this whole conversation is just the fact that when somebody comes in, and like I said, we could debate year 3, year 4, whatever it is, it's not good. I know commodity prices have rallied here recently, but what that actually ends up once the combines are rolling and once we're hauling to the elevator may be a completely different conversation. And hopefully we've all been diligent and marketed ahead enough to cover our expenses. But, everybody's grain marketing strategy, differs a little bit there. The biggest thing I will say is when somebody walks in and we're talking about how the year went, what happened, everything else, my biggest thing I go to is if we have a deficiency or if we are not profitable, what are we going to do different next year or implement something differently and become profitable? Because if the game or the plan is hope, as you mentioned, hope is not a good financial strategy, nor is it, faith-based, sure, but not for finances by any means. My biggest thing, I guess, where I go is what change are we going to make, right? And for me, as a lender, for my clients, I like to give them a reason on why they work with me day to day. And I want to stay not only in tune in the industry on what's going on, because when somebody comes into me and says, hey, Isaac, I have this great grand idea to put, buy a different planter and put a $50,000, liquid fertilizer system on it, whatever the cost may be. From my end, I want to be able to understand all the variables involved and what makes sense, what doesn't. But two, that gives me a lot of hope and everybody involved in that decision to know, okay, here's the plan going forward. We're going to make a change. We're being, intelligent about this change, because just going and trying something on blind faith, I mean, let's face it, Rod, there's a lot of, dare I say, snake oil out in the marketplace. And now, granted, though, we're also taking everybody's word for it, that certain things work. But my thing is from my seed days, result based. One thing I will point out is when I was at our meeting and just multiple people I've talked to, I've heard testimonial after testimonial after testimonial with Better Way to Farm on how the system has improved their operation. And so, my rule of thumb is 1 to 2 person probably gossip, 2 to 3 probably gossip. But when you start to get in that 10 people plus category, part of that starts to become fact that you're going to see, some kind of result.
Yep. Hey, I want to point out, you mentioned snake oil. I want you to know that snake oil primarily comes in a granular form, and I'm just going to leave that lay right there. Okay. I'm just going to let that go, but snake oil is a granular
help
product.
Yourself. Good, Jake.
Anyway, we'll move on. So yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think that I'm seeing so many things on social media with all these different, I did a rant yesterday, one of the companies, big company, and they're wanting people to put on a plant growth regulator, and their label says apply it at V2. Well, they got one guy that did it off label and it worked. But my experience says when I go off label, I'm pretty risky. And you don't like me taking risk. As the banker, I assume you look at that as irresponsible. And when you got someone irresponsible, you can't stick with them. And so the thing that happens here is based off of the soil test, based off of the hundreds of people that we can parade across that can talk about what they've been doing for 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and how it has completely changed their operation, it's a whole different ballgame. And so I assume as the lender, that's one of the things that is important to you that really caught your eye.
Oh yeah, no, all we do daily is assess risk, right? I mean, we literally have factors that go into, how risky, of an operation are we dealing with. Now, the management styles play a little bit into that. I mean, that's just knowing your operator. I mean, we all know operators that tend to be more progressive and tend to be trying state-of-the-art stuff. But some people, I joke with this system, you could have a brand new $500,000 corn planter, or you could have a, John Deere 7000 series that cost you $10,000, and still be able to implement the system in some way, shape, or form and see results, which I think is a must, going forward.
Yeah. Significant. I think that one of the common themes, and I've worked with some people who were trying to figure out what to do. And one of the things that makes me sad is that one common theme that I keep hearing is that the lender is saying you're going to have to back up on your standard of living. And I don't think we all need to live poor, But one guy in particular, they were fond of taking 2-week vacations to the Caribbean every year. And I think that perhaps this might be the year to forego the Caribbean vacation and pay attention. 10 grand here, 10 grand there really adds up. And we just really want to, pay attention to that. So being big cognizant of those kinds of expenses. As you start talking to some of your guys and some of your friends, what are you going to suggest about our system? How are you going to talk to them about taking a look at what we do here?
I'm going to back up to kind of the beginning because I think it plays into this in regards to the fact of like what brought me to Better Way to Farm, and and very similar approach I think to probably what I will take myself with anybody, because everybody has a salesman up their door, knocking, trying to sell them something, and I don't think that's ultimately what Better Way to Farm is trying to do. That sure isn't what I'm trying to do. But the educational aspect of it, the understanding the soil test, the understanding the tissue test, the importance of them, the ratios, and I still, like anybody, I have plenty to learn in that category. But being able to, in a way, you're creating yourself to be more independent from the retailer. And I hate to say it, the retailers don't have the best interest at the farm in mind. Your local sales guy probably does and does what they can for you, but they're working in a system that is kind of failed, and they're only being told what to do by their management and so on and so forth up the chain. Going back to, where am I going to be advising? Number one, the person's got to want it. Curiosity, right? If there's no curiosity, I've already know we failed, unfortunately. And because, again, the lulls of the grain markets and agriculture over the last 20 years, has allowed a little bit of laziness, I guess, to occur. But now that we are where pencil thin margins are very much a part of the conversation, we have to be businessmen and women, just like anybody. I was talking to a gentleman the other day outside of agriculture, and he wanted to know why in the world would a farmer risk it all to just break even and then continue doing it repeatedly? And I'm like, that's a question we all have to answer at the end of the day. And I think everybody has different answers to that question. But moral of the story, there's more than just finance to farming, and we all understand that. But I do want to comment on it because it happens often. You made a comment about the family Caribbean trip. Guys, you got to decide, do you want to farm going forward, and do you want that be passed down to your legacy, or let's just call it what it is, and are we talking about an overglorified hobby, right?
Yep.
So going back to conversations, I guess, happening this spring, it's going to be first, is there curiosity? And if there is curiosity, is it baby steps? Is it, are we already using, starter fertilizer? We just need to be using, potentially products that are a little bit more effective than maybe what we've been before. Maybe even management practices. That's the other thing is you can't sell a managed practice, I guess, unless you're selling equipment, I guess. That there's aspects of what Better Way to Farm, I feel like, offers following you guys, that you touch every part of farming that affects the overall outcome that you get to take advantage of come fall.
It's interesting because sometimes I'm amazed at the number of people who are startled because I'll tell them not to do something that I sell. I did it this morning. I had a guy just got off the phone, another gentleman who doesn't live too far from you over there, and he was wanting to apply some product. And I was like, we have zero data that shows applying that product at this stage is of any value to you. Don't do it. Let it ride. Keep it till next year. It'll keep. And let's get some bang for our buck. And then the other thing that we joke about here is I believe that our organization sells more sprayers than anybody else in America, because one of the first things we encourage is if that operation has any size at all, and I'm talking 1,000 acres and up, we're encouraging them to get a sprayer. They don't have to buy a $500,000 self-propelled. You can buy some awfully nice 90-foot boom pull type sprayers. And can you do a wide drop pass at V12? No. But you can control your destiny, and nobody's going to apply those chemicals more carefully than you. And the number of people who have told us that decision, I don't make any money on sprayers, but the farmers make a lot of money on sprayers. And the people that tell me that was the best decision we ever made is good. Now, I understand there are guys that have a job in town, and the co-op's kind of their hired man, and so they can't do that. But where it works, I encourage the guys to buy a sprayer. And I'm not talking about spending $500,000. I'm talking about something within the budget, something that makes Isaac the banker go, yeah, that makes sense. You can give 15 grand for this pull type sprayer that's got 90-foot booms and only has 1,200 acres ran through it ever. And there's a lot of those sitting around. And that is something that makes a big difference. I assume you're on board with those kinds of decisions.
No, very much so. And honestly, my head goes to the younger grower or the, part-time farmer that, maybe he's trying to get full-time on the farm or just stay on the farm, for an income standpoint. I mean, going out and buying, $500,000 Haggy, okay, maybe you don't have the acreage to support it, but if you have neighbors that are willing to implement this system that are also of similar scale, who's to say you can't help them out and create a little bit more income from your farm and thus on. I mean, the one thing I picked up on is we all have community members that like to talk about other operations and what they're doing wrong. But I will say there is an encouraging side to the younger growers coming in that they are very curious and thus they have to talk to their neighbors. And if the commodity prices don't change, there's going to be an element of consolidation. And I think what that looks like is, maybe 4 smaller growers that all farm 400 acres of row crop. And, they work with each other, whether it be equipment or practices or whatever it may be. I mean, a system of this nature, I think, makes every single one of those acres more profitable, which ultimately helps make it easier. But to your point, yeah, I mean, we do not have a fancy sprayer at the scope of operation that we are. It gets the job done, though. And ultimately, I mean, over time, maybe your equipment gets more sophisticated because of the money you're making and saving with, a system such as this.
Yeah, and back to your question, the people who don't farm, they don't there's 2 sides to that. Number one, I hear about the people who say, "Oh, my neighbor took $5,000 and went to Vegas," and I was like, I'm not impressed. I've got guys that bet $1 million every year in the springtime. I'm not impressed that you're dumb enough to put $5,000 on one-handed cards, but that's kind of for chickens. But anyway, and then there's the other side, like, why do you do that? Well, number one, hopefully, even though in the times when maybe I don't have as much cash as I want, I am continuing to see equity build. And we continue to do that. And let's be honest, I mean, for us, my grandkids are actually outside saying, "Hurry up, Grandpa, get out here and show us what to do." But when they're working on the farm, I think they're 16th generation farmers in the United States. And so for me, that legacy is what that's all about. And keeping that thing going. And it's what drives us. And other people don't understand it, and they don't have to. Now, I still got to run it like a business. I can't run it off the emotional side, because if I run it off of emotion, they ain't going to get to farm. But I think that's part of what does it. And I think you get that, obviously, in what you do. Well, I've kept you long enough, Isaac. I appreciate it. Any parting shots that you would say to the guy who's listening to this and going, "Man, I've listened to A Better Way to Farm for 3 months or 3 years or 5 years, and I haven't decided what to do." What would you say to that person who's listening today?
Well, in times like this, guys are very discouraged. There's so many variables that, you have to wonder, why in the world am I in this tractor? Why in the world am I in this sprayer doing this day to day? And I guess my encouragement is Better Way to Farm and the folks there and what they're doing. I left that meeting, I joked, I was probably talking a mile a minute, all fired up, because I was like, hey, there is a better option to what we're doing, or an in between full organic production and maybe conventional production kind of thing. The thing I will say is I am very early into this whole concept of the system, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing results here this fall. The biggest encouragement I would say is and it's been preached to me too, is baby steps, right? You do not need to go and spend $200,000 on this system year one to see what happens. Try incrementally a couple different products here and there and see what results you see. I have 10 operations within a 5-mile radius of each other, and the amount of differences between them is just incredible. Management style, how their philosophies towards different things, their goals at the end of the day are different, but the commonality is we're all raising, a crop, and we all need, fertilizer and a way to be more efficient about it. So I guess thinking of all of that, there is hope here. I do feel like in a time like this, as a lender, is definitely a struggle, but knowing that there is other options out there to potentially help a farmer is fantastic.
Excellent. I thank you. Appreciate your time, Isaac. We're just coming into the field day season. There's going to be about 20 opportunities across the United States where people have put in test plots, and they're going to have events that you can literally come and just take a look. Nobody's going to try to sell you anything. Nobody's going to high pressure you. Just come and take a look at what we do. And I think the thing about our fundamentals of agronomy, I think the thing about our field days is that we're always sharing ideas. And maybe the idea that you take home that makes you another $15 an acre has nothing to do with what we sell. Our goal here is that the farmers continue. Our goal here is that, Isaac, you just have a little kid, but you don't have any grandkids yet. But our goal here is that your grandkids get to farm that farm. And so that's what we're after. So I want to encourage the guys, follow us, pay attention to where those field days are. We would love to meet you at one of those field days. Guys, thank you for tuning in. As always, we appreciate it. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again really soon. And as always, we hope you're having a better day.